The Mazda Atenza is no doubt one of Kenya's favorite mid-size saloon or wagon. It's really selling well because it has won the hearts of many due to its striking looks, performance, premiumness, and space. In fact, it has become a very common sight on Kenyan roads. Now, there's this other category of people who don't like blending into the crowd. They don't like driving common vehicles. So they prefer something a bit more different, something that will still offer good performance, efficiency, space, features, and also striking looks. You have the option of the Peugeot 508. If you are in the market for a mid-size saloon or wagon and can't seem to make a decision between these two vehicles, then you are at the right place because we are going to have a very in-depth comparison review to help you decide on which one between these two you should go for. So please stay tuned. Do consider subscribing to the channel for more informative content on cars as well as bikes. And apart from informative content on cars as well as bikes, we also offer car consultation, in-depth independent reviews, and sourcing of new and locally used vehicles. Welcome to IK Auto Reviews. So we will be comparing the 2017 models. The 2017 508 is the first generation, which was in production from 2010 till 2018, while the 2017 Atenza is the third generation, which was in production from 2012 till present. So it has been a really long production time, though there have been several facelifts and improvements. Beginning with the engine options, the 508 comes with quite a lot of options, but the most common one in the Kenyan market is the 1600cc 4-cylinder turbo petrol that churns out around 162 horsepower. Then there's also a naturally aspirated version of the same engine that mostly comes in the very base trim levels. There's also a 1.8 liter turbo and non-turbo. There's a 2.0 naturally aspirated, and in terms of the diesel options, you can get a 1.6, a 2.0, or a 2.2 liter, all of which are turbocharged. So the engine you get depends on the market where you import from. Like for example, if you import from the UK, you are most likely to get one of the diesel options coupled to a manual gearbox. But generally, the most common option in Kenya is the 1.6 liter turbo, and that's the engine option we will be focusing on. Transmission wise, there's a 6-speed torque converter automatic or a 5 or 6-speed manual. This vehicle is only available in front-wheel drive. Typical of Peugeots, they have small capacity engines that have small turbos, so the engines are not all that much strained, so they do last, especially if you drive them in a reasonable manner. Generally, just avoid fast and rough accelerations frequently because that will lead to some strain on these small engines. Yes, they have the power to get up and go very quickly, but frequent rough driving will lead to quick wear of these engines. Now, the turbo on this 1.6 liter plus the 6-speed conventional automatic really makes this vehicle feel spirited. It gets up to speed very fast. Before you know it, you are well past 100 kilometers per hour. And even when it comes to making overtaking maneuvers, you will not feel the need for more power. It's really that good despite the engine being only 1.6 liter. As for reliability, it's good enough. It's honestly not as solidly reliable compared to the Atenza, but if maintained well, it can be quite reliable. We will discuss some of the issues this engine has when we have a look at its weak points at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. Now, as I've always said, any turbocharged engine needs very keen maintenance. Use the genuine recommended oil and service parts. Use clean fuel and service the car at the recommended mileage. For example, in this Peugeot 508, the oil you can use is ProTech 5W30 or Mobile ESP 5W30, or there are even other alternative synthetic oils that can be used as long as they are genuine. So maintenance is very key. The good thing is now that Peugeot service parts are easily available and reasonably priced. You'll be surprised to find that some of the Peugeot parts are in fact more affordable compared to those of Mazda's. Speaking of Mazda, the Atenza comes with 3 engine options: a 2000cc petrol that is good for around 155 horsepower. There's a 2.5-liter petrol that gives around 184 horsepower. And lastly, there's a 2.2-liter turbo diesel that produces around 175 horsepower. But the torque output is way higher than in the petrol options. So off the line, this diesel feels very powerful and spirited. It's almost like as if it urges you to drive it fast. Transmission wise, there's either a 6-speed automatic, a torque converter automatic, or a 6-speed manual. In fact, Mazda and Peugeot are among the very few automakers who have not embraced the CVT gearbox. The Atenza is only available in front-wheel drive. Now, the petrol options are very reliable. They are your best bet if you prefer a simple, reliable point A to B car, especially the 2.0 liter. If you need more power, then the 2.5 liter is good enough. The diesel is the most powerful and efficient, but it's sensitive and can be prone to a few issues. I did an in-depth review on Mazda diesel engine maintenance, so please do check it out. I'll leave a link to that video in the description box. But just a quick recap on some of the things to watch out. Watch where you refuel, because dirty diesel can cause many issues. You can also delete the DPF to avoid any future problems. Something else is the servicing. Make sure you use the genuine recommended oil, which in this case is Mazda Ultra DPF 5W30 or an alternative such as Remula R6 10W40, and do the service at the recommended mileage. I covered quite a lot in that particular video, so once again, please do check it out. All these engine options and transmissions have the Sky Active technology to improve on the efficiency and performance. And speaking of performance, the Atenza is among the best handling mid-size saloons in the market currently. Very precise body control. It's an enjoyable vehicle to drive. Something else worth mentioning is the IE loop system. Now, in other vehicles, the alternator is powered by the engine. Then that alternator powers most of the car's electrical components such as lights, AC, infotainment system, power windows, etc. But in the Atenza, there's an IE loop system whereby the moment you lift your foot from the accelerator, instead of that energy being lost, it's transferred to a capacitor. A capacitor is a sort of a way better battery that can be charged very fast. It's very long lasting and can store lots of power. So once that energy is stored in that capacitor, it is then passed through a DC converter before powering the vehicle electrical components. This helps to save a bit more fuel by relieving the engine of doing all the work to ensure that there is power to supply the electrical components. Let's talk about how efficient these vehicles are. Expect between 12 to around 17 kilometers per liter in the Peugeot's 1.6 liter turbo, depending on how you drive. The non-turbo version is a bit more efficient, but still, if you're aggressive, it will consume more because it has limited power, yet you will be working the accelerator hard to squeeze out as much power as possible. As for the diesels, the 1.6 will give around 16 to 23 kilometers per liter, which is quite good, while the 2 liter and 2.2 liter will give anywhere between 12 to around 20 kilometers per liter. The 2.0 liter in the Atenza will return about 13 kilometers per liter, the 2.5 around 11.5, and the diesel between 11 to 19 kilometers per liter. Now, these figures are real-world figures. What the manufacturer claims is always very different from the real-world figures. Like, for example, it's claimed that the 2.0 liter in the Atenza can achieve around 17 kilometers per liter, but it's quite difficult to get such a figure. It mostly achieves around 13-14 kilometers per liter depending on your driving style. Both vehicles also feature the stop and go technology that shuts off the engine in traffic to save more fuel. The 508 gets a large 72-liter fuel tank, while the Atenza gets a 62-liter tank. The ground clearance in both vehicles fall below the recommended 165mm, but still not too bad. You can easily install slightly larger wheels and increase the clearance. The 508 measures in at 145mm and the Atenza at around 160mm. Both cars get ventilated discs at the front and solid discs at the back. Suspension wise, again, both cars get McPherson struts at the front and a multi-link spring setup at the back. Now, how safe are these vehicles? Both come with the driver, passenger side and curtain airbags. They also get anti-lock brake system, hill start assist, electronic stability program, traction control system, brake assist and active headrests. The Atenza adds adaptive front lighting system that enables the headlights to turn in line with the steering inputs. As for the active driver assist safety features, they both get collision mitigation, but blind spot detection, parking sensors, and distance control system are optional. This distance control system is similar to radar cruise control. The carb weight of the 508 ranges between 1475 to 1615 kgs, while that of the Atenza between 1450 to 1550 kgs. Lastly, some of the extra features you can expect to get in these vehicles, depending on the trim level, are leather interior, heads-up display, paddle shifts, electric seats, sunroofs, 18-inch alloy wheels, and in addition to these, the 508 can add massaging seats, quad zone AC, rear sunshade, and a panoramic glass roof in the wagon. The Atenza can also come with a premium Bose audio system and an MZD Connect, so they are very well kitted. What about their prices? A 2016 and 2017 508 will set you back between 2.4 to around 2.7, 2.8 million, depending on the trim level. So it's quite pricey, but we will also talk about value for money in a short while. The Atenza will set you back between 2.1 to around 2.8 million for 2017 model. So generally they are almost neck and neck, though the starting price of the 508 is a bit high. Before we talk about value for money, let's delve into their exteriors and interior designs. Do let me know which one you would prefer in terms of the exterior design. I think the Atenza may just take the day. It's a very striking, sporty, and sleek design. No wonder it has won the hearts of many. The 508 is not far behind. It looks very elegant, an almost no-nonsense appearance. It's the kind of a car that when you show up in, it will give the impression that this is a serious individual who means business. It will certainly attract attention, but in a serious way, while the Atenza will attract attention in a sporty and youthful way. Personally, I tend to be more inclined towards the 508. Stepping into the interiors, the serious business vibe continues in the 508. It's simple and straightforward. It's very minimalistic. The seats are supremely comfortable and supportive. Something to take note of is the very small glove box. Right-hand drive Peugeots normally have this small glove box because of the location of the fuse box. At the back, the space is generous, and in terms of convenience features, you can even get a quad zone AC if you go for the higher trim levels. There are even sun blinds, so it's really well appointed, and 3 people will be comfortable back there for long journeys. The boot is again very generous, so much will fit back there, though I've heard of complaints about water leaking into the boot due to the design of that boot lid. The wagon is even way more spacious and practical. Moving on to the Atenza, there is no doubt that this is a very premium interior. It looks and feels expensive, from the dashboard to the feel of the materials. In fact, the layout is more interesting compared to the one in the 508. The knobs and buttons feel expensive and tactile. The seats are also very comfortable, and the space on offer is good enough. At the back, 3 adults will be perfectly accommodated comfortably. And as for convenience features, there are AC vents and USB charging ports in the armrest. Just like in the 508, the boot is very spacious and can swallow so much. Generally, in terms of the interior, I think the Atenza takes the day once again. So before we talk about value for money, it's important to also look at each car's strong and weak points. Let's begin with the 508. This French saloon is spacious. It will perfectly serve a family of 5 very comfortably. It also has some good elegant looks that will make you stand out on the road. As I said earlier, it's a different car that will give out that serious no-nonsense vibe. Another pro is its good efficiency thanks to its small capacity engines. Lastly, it's quite feature loaded. In fact, its top trim level is more loaded compared to a top trim Atenza. Onto its weaknesses, it can have a bit of issues to do with the electrical components, from the central locking, alarm, power mirrors and windows, and even the electric handbrake. These features can at times stop working or misbehave, and it's all due to electrical faults. And in fact, this is a common issue with Peugeots. Another issue is the DPF in the diesels, and this is a common issue with these modern diesel engines. the best bet is just deleting it once and for all to avoid any future issues. Turbo issues is yet another issue. There have been cases of turbo failure in these vehicles which can be caused by poor maintenance, and that's why I keep saying that maintenance is very key with any turbocharged engine. There's also this issue about solid reliability. This car can be reliable, but to be honest, compared to Japanese competitors, it may fall just very slightly behind. To best describe it, I would say it will meet your expectations if you maintain it well, but the Japanese competitors will exceed your expectations. The last con has to do with soot deposits on the intake valves, especially on the 1.6-liter turbo petrol, and this can be due to recirculation of exhaust gases which contain soot particles. Soot may also end up being deposited in the combustion chamber, which may consequently lead to poor efficiency and performance. I'll not go into details about how that all happens because this video will end up becoming too long, so I'll cover that in another video. Or if you'd like to know more about that, then reach me via WhatsApp or email. Something that can be done to mitigate this issue is use of clean fuel. Make sure you refuel at reputable petrol stations with clean fuel. You could also use additives such as gum out cleaner in the fuel tank to help get rid of that soot, or even use intake valve cleaners. Onto the Mazda Atenza. This Japanese saloon is a premium offering that is very engaging to drive, spacious and reliable, especially the petrol variants. Onto its weaknesses, which are few. The first one is the sensitive diesel variants. Once again, please watch that video on Mazda diesel engine maintenance to get an insight on the do's and don'ts of that particular engine. It can be reliable, but strict maintenance is important. There's also the issue to do with the electronic parking brake, which can fail. This is a relatively new technology and it has its own fair share of issues which will be ironed out with time. With all that said, which one should you go for? Considering all the factors such as reliability, price, performance, looks, and features, these cars are very close, but the Atenza takes the day by a small margin. It seems like a better value proposition, especially considering its lower starting price and all that it has to offer, but I would not necessarily say I recommend it over the 508 because I tend to think these cars appeal to slightly different groups of people. The Atenza is more suited for youthful people who prefer striking looks and sporty handling, while the 508 is more suited for people who are a bit more mature, people who prefer superior comfort, simple but elegant looks and refinement. That said, if I really had to give a recommendation, I would recommend the Atenza because of its performance, premiumness, looks, and solid reliability. But personally, I would go with the Peugeot. No car is perfect, and these cars both have their strengths and weaknesses, but they are both really good. Which one would you go for? Do let me know in the comment section. I hope this has been helpful. Thanks a lot for watching. If you have any enquiries, as always, feel free to reach me via WhatsApp or email. That's it for this episode. Stay safe, drive safe, and see you in the next one.